Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Stephanie Duran with CalFresh Outreach SEDSS, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. This training webinar will demonstrate how to use the See for Yourself portal. So I'm going to go over a few logistics before we actually get started. Our webinar will be approximately 1 hour. This webinar will be held in listen-only mode. You may connect your audio in one of two ways, either over the telephone or through your computer. You should see the option under Audio on the webinar control panel. Please be aware that if you wish to speak and ask questions during the Q&A session of the webinar, you must connect with a USB mic and headset or by phone. Connecting with only headphones will not allow you to speak and ask questions. If you do not have a USB mic, you must connect by phone in order to listen and ask questions. Keep in mind that if you are connected by phone and choose to connect via mic and speakers, you will be automatically disconnected from the telephone line. If you would like to ask a question, please type your question into the questions box and press send. Questions submitted via the question box will either be answered back to you electronically, or the moderator will ask the presenter your question. At the end of the presentation, we will have an open Q&A time to ask your questions by phone or headset. To ask a question during this open session, please select the hand button, which is on the little sidebar to the left of the control panel. So please take a moment right now and locate the hand button, and if you found it, please click the hand. Great. Now when you have raised your hand to ask a question during the Q&A time, we will unmute your line and you will be asked to present your question. You can all put your hands down now. This webinar will be recorded. If you're not comfortable with having your voice recorded, you may opt to enter your question through the question box and it will remain anonymous. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Jason Horton, our presenter today.
Hi everyone, this is Jason Horton with the C4 project. I'm going to walk through the functionality in the See for Yourself system to show you the portal application that we made for CBO, community-based organizations, to be able to create an account, log applications for individuals that you're assisting, and track those applications for submission to the state for funding purposes. So what I'm going to do first is create an account, just to show those of you who haven't used this particular website before how that works. So I click Create an Account on the See for Yourself website. And one thing I should mention is I'm currently in a test environment. This is not our production environment, so you may see some things that are not in production See for Yourself, or if errors pop up, it's because this is our assembly test environment and could potentially have a defect or unforeseen results pop up. Anyway, after you click the login account, it'll take you to the login page. On the right side, you have entries for existing users, username and password. On the left side there, you've got a login for a new user. This is a user account for an individual, and then a new community-based organization, or CBO user. And this is where, if you are creating a CBO account, you would want to click the hyperlink here. Clicking the hyperlink will take you to the account registration page, which will ask you for some required information to identify your users of this account. So I'll fill in some basic information here, but what we ask for is the organization name, primary contact for that organization, the address of that organization, the city, state, and zip. And I'm just going to use Stanislaus as the county since I know the zip code there. Contact number isn't required, but is always helpful. Email address, again, is useful. But after that, you need to enter in an account name. So I'm going to do a CBO. We require you to enter in the password twice for the purposes of making sure that you know what you're entering. We have two questions to help you in the event that you have forgotten your password. The first question is, what is your tax ID for your organization? The second question is, when did you first receive funding? And then you have to read the privacy, or check that you've read the privacy statement. Clicking next should create your account. Say your username and password has been created successfully. Navigating past this page will take you into your portal. So we default to the application page. This is where you go to start logging new applications for people that you are helping. We also have two other tabs. The first tab is a series of resources. These are mostly links to the state websites, some forms, some policy, and then a link back to create a new application. Our second tab, I'll show you very quickly, but we'll go into more detail later, is the EAP status page. This is your area to get an aggregate count of those applications you've created by program and an overall application count with dates and the ability to filter by date and by the application assister. Okay, so now that I've shown you a couple of those pages, I'm going to go into the application page and create a new application. An important note is once you get to the point where you are starting an application, the rest of the application flow is exactly the way that the customer who has created their own individual account will see it. All of the same questions are asked. All of the same values can be entered. There's only one addition, and that will be at the end of the application. I'll show you where you can enter in the application assister name. So to start off with, we ask you to select what programs you're applying for. I'll just enter them all. The next page will collect some basic information about the primary applicant. So we're looking for, I'll enter my own information. As we enter the address information, once we click the next button, we'll actually go through some address normalization to make sure that the address is a valid one. So I'll show you what that looks like here shortly. Anything that has an asterisk next to it, as mentioned up here in the instructions, is a required field. I can spell my own name. And anything that doesn't have an asterisk next to it is something that can be entered, but it is not required. So clicking next here, again, this is where the address normalization occurs, and this is where we go through our software that checks the statewide address database, essentially the software that we use anyway, to determine what the closest possible match is for the address that was entered. So you can select that, or you can select the one that was entered by the user. Clicking next takes us into some more essentially demographic information questions for the primary applicant. So you can enter in specific information. I don't have a maiden name. So some of the questions that you'll see here have been added from the ACA changes, the single streamline application. So you have yes or no for the Social Security number. Answering no asks some additional questions of why they don't have a social, but all of these questions should be self-explanatory based off of the text and the functionality of the pages. Again, this is just background information, again, more demographic information. Nothing on these pages needs to be entered, but the more information you enter, the better chance the customer will have of getting eligibility, getting the appropriate eligibility. So once you've completed a section, at the top of the page you'll see different tabs marked as completed or different colors. So we are currently on the people section, which is where we get information about anyone else living in the home. The start application is where we go to collect information about the primary applicant and basic household information. So you can enter in additional people by clicking yes. Again, just some information. Okay, so okay. So getting past that page, we'll take you through the same series of pages that you had to go through for the primary applicant, where you ask more additional or more demographic information, male, female, date of birth, social. I'm going to fly through some of these pages since you saw them previously, and at this point it's really just data collection. Clicking next here will take you to the tax household information page, which is important for Medi-Cal, but is not important or not needed, I should say, for CalWorks or CalFresh. But again, since nothing is required, you can click next to get past it if it's something that is not needed for the application or not known at the time of application. From this point on, job through income, expense, property, and other, each of the sections starts with a series of root questions. So clicking next will take you past the section entirely. But should the question be answered yes for any one root question, then when you click next, it will take you into a series of additional questions related to that root question. And again, you can fill out as much or as little information as the customer knows at that time, but the more information you have, the easier it is to process the application when it gets into C4. So considering that all of these pages are essentially the same at this point, I'm just going to click a Send Application button, which will take us to the end of the application where we have to go through some final pages to determine whether or not the customer agrees to all the rights and responsibilities and some other additional questions. One thing I want to mention before we get into that is the application ID that shows on the top here is a way for the CBO account owner or user to identify an individual application and tie it to an individual person in the event that during the application process that customer needs to leave or doesn't have the information ready at that time. You can leave the application, go back to your portal page, and you can see it shows the application ID here. The reason that we don't show any client information on this page is since the CBOs by default are going to be logging applications for many different people, we didn't want to show anything on this page that could be tied to an individual person in the event that a customer is looking at this page and happens to see someone else's data. So if you are in the process of dealing with someone's application and you know they need to leave, that application ID that you saw at the top of the page in the application flow is something that you would need to mark down as this is their identifier for when they come back. When they do come back, you log into your portal, you go to the application tab, and then you see the unsubmitted applications here with an application ID identifying which one you need to work. Clicking continue will take you right back into that application flow to the last place that you, the last section that you got to. So in this case, since we had clicked the send application or submit application, we are at the end of the application flow, and it will take us through some final steps. Additional services talks about a couple of our extra programs in the state and information about expedited CalFresh that they may or may not be eligible for. Next takes you through the voter registration pages where they can select if they are interested, already registered, not registered, or just don't want to answer the question. Clicking next takes you to the office selection page. This is where the customer can indicate in the event that they go to a county that has many offices throughout their county. This is where they can say, hey, I'm interested in dealing with my application or my case at this office because it's closest to where I live. And one important thing to note, and granted since I chose Stanislaus, there's only one office, if they go through the address normalization page and they select the address that was spit out by our software, it's going to order these in closest proximity at the top all the way down to furthest away at the bottom. So if they've gone through that process, then the first one that they select should be the one that is closest to them. Selecting the office and clicking next takes them through the disclaimer information where we have all the rights and responsibilities in a scrolling text box. Scrolling down to the bottom allows them to now click this checkbox to say that they've read them. Going to the next page is the e-signature page, and this is where they need to understand all of the different things that they're agreeing to by signing the form. Each person who needs to sign the application needs to have an electronic signature. So in this scenario, since we don't have, since we're signed into a CBO account, any person who needs to sign it is going to need to create an e-signature at that time. So create an e-signature will take me to a new page to create an e-signature. We need to create the person that that signature is tied to. You can add in as much or as little information just to identify that person. This signature will be transferred over as a part of the application and will be tied to any account that that person creates in the future as long as they tie that account to their case in C4. But for the purposes of account creation, and because we can't show anyone else's personal information, it's going to be something that needs to be done every time through the CBO application submission. So they need a username and PIN. The PIN has to be 5 digits. The PIN can be numbers and characters. They should use secret questions and answers to allow them to reset their PIN in the event that it's forgotten. So clicking next here creates the electronic signature with the username, PIN, and person. So this 3-point identification for signature is essentially select the person, enter in your username, and then enter in your PIN. Now at this point I want to show you the only difference as a part of the CBO view of the application process. That is this one line down at the bottom where it says Application Assister. There's a text box here that allows you to enter in the application assister's name, identifier, however it is that that application assister, who could be, if there are 2 people using the CBO account, Bob and Sally, and they both use the same account, this would be the way where you could distinguish how effective Bob is, how effective Bob is in terms of submitting applications versus Sally. So I'll just enter in. I'll enter in Sean. So when I submit my application here, the next page that pops up is a congratulations page. It gives them their e-application number, which is an identifier that can be used when communicating with the county so that the county knows which e-application they should look at. It shows their e-application date, which is today, although depending on time and date, could be the next day or next business day if we're looking at holidays, weekends, or after business hours. It shows the office that you submitted your e-application to, and then it gives you some information about verifications. It asks you if you're interested in registering to vote, regardless of whether you indicated yes or no. So now, going back to your portal page, your home area for a CBO, the application is no longer in an unsubmitted status, so you don't see the continue or delete buttons. But when you go into the e-app status page, we now see some data. So each of the tabs for each program is collapsed when you first get there, but each program has a submit month, whether it is pending, approved, or denied, the overall program count, and that's for each program, and then at the bottom here there's an overall application count. So even though for this particular view it looks like 3 separate applications were submitted, these are program level applications, and the actual applications submitted for this particular date range or assister is 1. So I went ahead and actually created another account that I could show you, and did some data manipulation to show you what it would look like if an account has been created with multiple applications over multiple months for different application assisters. So I'm going to log into that account. So in this scenario, when I go to e-app status, you can see I have varying levels of CalWorks, CalFresh, and Medi-Cal applications in different levels of approval or denial, as well as different application counts over various months. So if you're interested in seeing how many applications were submitted for the month of November only, then you can do that search, and when it comes back, it will only show the applications where the submit month is in November. Also, we don't show the application assister which applications were used by the application or were created or assisted by the application assister. But if I were to enter in a specific application assister's name, it will bring back how many that particular application assister worked on. So in this case, this person worked on 1, Jason worked on 1. If you leave it blank, it's going to bring back everything where any application assister helped, as long as it's under this specific login for the CBO account. At this point, it's really in the hands of the counties. The e-application goes over to the C4 pages, which is where we call our queue for newly submitted applications. So it's up to the worker at that point to process their queue, link it to an existing account, create a new case, and then work with the customer or work with the customer to get any additional information that is required.
Mode.
Hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Duran with CalFresh Outreach at CDSS, and I will be the moderator of today's webinar. This webinar will be an opportunity for attendees to ask questions or address concerns regarding the See for Yourself portal. I'm going to go over a few logistics before we get started. Our webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. This webinar will be held in listen-only mode. You may connect your audio in one of 2 ways, either over the telephone or through your computer. You should see the option under Audio on the webinar control panel. Please be aware that if you wish to speak and ask questions during the Q&A session of the webinar, you must connect with a USB mic and headset or by phone. Connecting with only headphones will not allow you to speak and ask questions. If you do not have a USB mic, you must connect by phone in order to listen and ask questions. Keep in mind that if you are connected by phone and choose to be connected via mic and speakers, you'll be automatically disconnected from the telephone line. If you'd like to ask a question, please type your question into the questions box and press send. Questions submitted via the questions box will either be answered back to you electronically or the moderator will ask the presenter your question. We will have an open Q&A time to ask your questions by phone or headset. To ask a question during this open session, please select the hand button, which is on the little sidebar to the left of the control panel. Please take a moment right now to locate the hand button, and if you found it, please click the hand. Great. Now when you have raised your hand to ask a question, I will unmute your line and you will be asked to present your question. You can all put your hands down now. This webinar will be recorded. If you're not comfortable with having your voice recorded, you may opt to enter your question through the question box and it will remain anonymous. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Jason Horton, our presenter for today.
Hi everyone, this is Jason. I believe we are going to move right into questions and answers today because of the technical difficulties we had last time, and I know that a lot of you didn't get a chance to ask the questions that you were hoping to be able to ask. We do have a PowerPoint that we will save for the end of questions that were already asked, but for now, do we have a question ready? Stephanie, are there any questions ready?
We have one question that's come in from Betty, though she just now appears offline. As a reminder, this is Jeff Lassiter with CDSS. If you do not have the USB mic and are not connected by telephone, you can raise your hand, but we may not be able to hear you. If we can't hear you, just go ahead and type your question into the question box, and I will relay your question from there to Jason. So I see Betty's hand up. Are you able to speak to us, Betty? Then please go ahead and write your question into the question box. Any other hands at this point in time? Okay, Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and go through a few of the previously asked questions.
Okay, sounds good. Let me just switch gears here. All right. So the first question we have that was asked, does the application assister's name only appear in the CBO account for tracking purposes only? It does not appear on the application itself, correct?
That is correct. The assister's name was primarily used for reporting purposes for each CBO so that they could help track how many applications each assister was using if they were all using a unified account for that one CBO.
All right, next question. Where and how do you upload the verification documents?
So currently, verification documents are uploaded through the My Documents page in a regular See4Yourself account, which means that if you are trying to upload documents for somebody that you're helping, they will need to create their own individual account. And I will go into See4Yourself to show how that works. So I'm going to log into a regular account in our test environment. So you see there are 5 tabs here: My Messages, My Things to Do, My Benefits, My Documents, and My Applications. Under My Documents, when the page comes up, you will see a part at the top here that says Upload My Documents, and then down below at the bottom there's a document search. This document search is for electronically posted documents from C4. But if they want to upload a document, they would click the button, select Document, and then we ask them some identifying information for the document. Is it something that needs to be linked to a case? If a case is selected, this case number at the bottom becomes required, and the only way to select a case number is if they have linked their C4 Yourself account to their C4 case. If they haven't, then as you can see, when I try and find something in the drop-down, nothing shows up. So the only way to link it at that point is to an e-application. And that will show all the applications that have been submitted, I believe in order of submission. So this way, if they've just submitted an application, they can still upload documents and verifications, tie it to that e-application, and then once the worker processes that application and links it to a case, those uploaded documents will get associated to the case for the worker to be able to review. We have document types, so if they wanted to upload a bank verification, birth certificate, if a name is associated to that document, it's not just a case level document. Like for a birth certificate, it would be, Sally's birth certificate. And then we ask you to actually upload the document itself. So there are only 2 document types that we currently support. That would be TIFF, which is an image type, and PDF. So if they have the ability to scan, they can save it as a TIFF. If they have it as a PDF, or say scanned as a PDF, they can upload it that way as well. Okay, that's next question.
And Jason, this is Jeff.
Okay, for a moment.
Just to clarify, before we leave that point, in the CBO-assisted application, the CBO application assister cannot upload documents. This is only for a personal application where they can upload the documents. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, if the CBO has an account and they're trying to assist somebody by creating an application, if they're within their own CBO account, they are not going to be able to help the customer by uploading documents through that account. And the reason for that is you are going to be able to help many, many different people through the CBO account, and we need to make sure that personal information is protected and isn't viewable by someone else in the process of helping the many different customers that you might have. It hasn't been designed to allow for that to occur yet, and it's possible that it could happen in the future, but as of right now, the only way to do it is through a personal account.
Okay, and is there any way then of linking the CBO-assisted application to that then personal application account, or is that linkage lost?
The linking to a CBO-assisted application to a personal C4 Yourself account happens if the customer goes and creates their own account and then requests a registration, and I can show you how that works if you want to pass. There you go. So I'm just going to log back in here as if I had created my personal account. So we'll pretend that this particular login account didn't have a previous application from submitting. But if you go to the My Things to Do page, then you can, the second hyperlink here is Register with My County. This is requesting a link to your cases. This is where we are having the customer provide some information that a worker will review in a queue to determine whether or not this is the right person and associated to the appropriate case. That will allow the case and the account to be linked, and as long as they link it to that case, then any application that was submitted by a CBO will automatically in the background be linked to this account. They'll be able to see the previous applications that they've submitted, and any documents that they need to post, any documents that are posted from C4, benefit information from C4, all of that will be associated appropriately. But as you can see on this Register with My County page, we give them a series of fields that we use for a search in our own C4 system to determine who the correct person to link is. So in this case, we have the name of the person, Social Security number, date of birth, gender, address, and phone number. And if they know their case number, that just makes it easier to search. And the only thing that's required is name, gender, and a county /zip.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Sure.
All right, let's move on to the next question. If an application is pending in 1 month and it is approved in a subsequent month, which report month will show when the application is approved?
We go based off of the application date within the app status page on the CBO. Unfortunately, I'm in an environment that I'm not going to have a whole lot to show, but I will show you the page. So I'm going to log into a CBO account. So I assume everyone's familiar with the CBO accounts and the way that it shows. So you have resources, EF status, and application. Obviously, the application tab is where you'd go to create new applications or finish existing applications that were not completed. Resources is just a series of links for ideally helpful documents or things that would be useful to you. EF status is what we're talking about, where we give you a view of the status of applications that have been submitted over the period of time that is selected in the date range from and to. You can also filter it by application assister. What currently shows is the status, the application status by program. The application status is an entire application. So you might have 5 CalFresh applications, 4 CalWorks applications, and 3 Medi-Cal applications, but that actually equates to a total of 5 applications submitted because some of the applications apply for multiple programs. So what we do is we show you a status of each program, and the status is based off of the application date. So if you submitted the application in January of 2015 and it wasn't approved until a calendar date of February of 2015, the application date that was approved, that went from pending to approved, would still show January because that was the application date.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. People living in rural communities sometimes do not have physical addresses. Can P.O. boxes be used?
So the application as a whole has been based entirely off of the actual paper document application. So anything that was acceptable per county, per policy within the paper application is going to be acceptable within the online application. It is definitely possible to add in a P.O. box because the thing that we're checking more than anything else in our online application is whether or not the zip code matches the county code. We want to make sure that the customer is being sent to the appropriate county. So we are not going to restrict any address being entered because of a P.O. box, I will say we just need to make sure that the counties have everything that they need to be able to grant eligibility. So if a P.O. box is acceptable in paper, it would be fine in electronic form as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. What happens if an application is partially completed and web access is temporarily lost? Does the portal save the application data each time a page is completed and next is selected?
Yes, every page is saved, and application progress is saved every time the next button is clicked. So no information is lost other than information that was entered on a page when the communication error actually occurred. So if you were in the process of filling out the citizenship page and you were halfway down the page and you hadn't clicked next yet, anything you'd entered in that page when internet went down would be lost. But everything you'd entered before that would have been saved.
Okay, thank you. And right now we'd like to take a moment to open up any group questions that may have come up during these last couple questions we sifted through.
All right, everyone, this is your opportunity to raise your hand if you have a question that you'd like to ask, or if you can't talk to us by phone, feel free to enter any of your questions into the question box. So far, no one has used the question box to ask any additional questions. But as we go through these questions that Stephanie's reading, we're hoping that these will perhaps remind you to ask questions that you may have had, because this is your opportunity to touch base directly with Jason and get your questions about C4 answered. So do we have any hands or questions? Nothing at present, so Stephanie, continue on.
Okay, sounds good. Outreach workers sometimes work with clients over the phone to submit their applications. Using C4, how is electronic signature information submitted?
So within the C4 system, we do have an electronic signature process, but it isn't a remote process. The customer would have to be sitting next to the worker to be able to have that happen. I don't really have anything to display on this. For electronic signatures remotely, ideally they're using C4 yourself, where they're setting up a username and, a person username and PIN to be able to uniquely identify that particular person's signature. If we're talking about telephonic signature, we don't currently capture anything for telephonic signature, and different programs have different rules on being able to take a telephonic signature currently, if I'm remembering correctly. So I believe Medi-Cal, you actually can take a telephonic signature, and one or two of the other programs you can't currently. Did that answer the question, or is there sort of a follow-up on that?
No, I think that answers the question. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, sure.
All right, next up, can the rights and responsibilities be printed out for the clients?
Yes. I will go through a quick application to show you how that will work. So I'm going to log into the CBO account I created to just take it from that starting point so that it's familiar. So I'm going to start a brand new application. I am not going to be as diligent as I'm sure you guys are and enter every single field, but I will enter enough to create an application so that I can show you what you want to see. So I selected the programs. I'm going to quickly go through and fill out some person names and addresses. That is essentially all that's necessary for the primary applicant here, and actually all that's really necessary for an application as a whole. So I guess while I'm at it, I can show you the save of data as long as next is selected. So I'll just go back, I'll exit out of the application. We can say that that is the equivalent of losing connectivity. When you come back, you have this application ID, which showed at the top of the application as it was being worked on, so that you can uniquely identify an application to an individual. And the reason we only show application ID is if you are working with a different customer and they happen to see your screen, we don't want to pass along somebody's name as a part of this. So clicking continue will take you back into the application. And there's also this remove button in the event that somebody decides they didn't want to apply or they don't come back in afterwards. We start back up with the application. You can see that the programs I selected are still checked. Going to the next page, you can see the person's name and address that I previously entered. And that's going to be true for every single page that I navigate past by clicking next. All of the information is always going to be saved. Okay, so moving on from that, getting past that first page allows me to send application, which essentially just bypasses all of the subsequent pages of people, job, income, expenses, property, other, sends us to the end, which is the send application. This is where the finalization process occurs for the application. You get some extra information. You have to go through the rights and responsibilities. You're asked for voter registration, and then you're asked to sign the application. So we tell you about additional services, school lunch program, WIC, and a new program, Text for Baby. We talk about expedited CalFresh in the event that you have applied for CalFresh or CalWorks. Clicking next takes us to the voter registration page. It is not required for you to answer anything, but the three selections are yes, no, and already registered. The very next page is our disclaimer page, office selection. And then right after that is the disclaimer page where we go through the rights and responsibilities. This page has the entire rights and responsibilities in this text box. You cannot check that you've read them. It is grayed out and not possible to click. You need to scroll through all of the data. And when you get all the way to the bottom, then the checkbox becomes available. Clicking next takes you to the signature page, and this is where the customer will need to create their electronic signature. And the reason that we have them create an electronic signature is if they ever need to apply again or sign a periodic reporting document like the SAR-7, this electronic signature can be used as long as they retain their username and PIN. So create person level information, which allows me to identify whose signature I'm trying to use. We ask them a series of secret questions and answers so that if they ever forgot their username or PIN, they'd be able to recover that. So clicking next, I've now created, form contains errors. Oh, apparently I didn't type right. Okay, now I've created my electronic signature. I can select the person who I want to sign it, enter in my username and PIN. At the bottom here is where you can type in the application assister. Should you want to uniquely identify that Jason filled this out versus just somebody in the CBO filling it out. Submit your application. So now we have the e-application number, we have the application date, we have the office that it's going to, potential verifications that they might be asked for, and then we have a link to the Register to Vote site. Regardless of whether they entered that they were interested in registering to vote or not, this displays to help them register more easily. Now, the reason for all of this was so that I could show you how to print the rights and responsibilities. We have two buttons up here at the top. There's a view summary and a print. If you do the view summary, you get a preview of what will eventually print by clicking print, or you can view summary and print from this page. But when I view summary, you get a summary of the entire application and all the data that they entered, which because of my great diligence is not very much. So you get a series of questions that they answered or not, and then at the bottom here, you get the entire printout of all of the rights and responsibilities. So they can print this entire e-application, which would include those rights and responsibilities, and have that for their documentation. Additionally, every previous e-application that was submitted will have a view of the rights and responsibilities at the bottom as well. So should they request a link to their case from their personal account and the e-application is associated, when they have that view of old applications submitted, they can click on that and again print this out at any point.
Okay, thank you, Jason. The next question that was submitted on the application, is it required to put down a physical address? What can be done on those cases where the client might not have a physical address but do have a mailing address? How can we specify that the address we enter is a mailing address only?
So we do require a physical address, and a mailing address is optional. I can show you how that looks. So I'm just going to create another new application through the CBO account real quick. So right now we show a physical address line. So because this is required, if the person is homeless, it's somewhat up to county policy, but a lot of counties, when they have a homeless individual, they typically have their information for a physical and or mailing address added, essentially set to the county office address, so that they can do a what do we call it, a will call or some sort of a in-person pickup at the office, and they just have them come in periodically to pick up any mail, correspondence, issuances of benefits from that office itself. So I don't have a blanket answer of what you should put in there, but I know that you can put in roughly anything as long as the zip code matches the county code.
People also enter general delivery.
Yeah, and some people would also enter general delivery instead of homeless, but if you do have a mailing address, then in the line where it says, is your mailing address the same as your physical address, you select no, and that's where you get an entry for a completely separate mailing address. So I'll just go through and show you that the indication of homeless with a city, state, and zip will show up. It's just, instead of giving you selections that are normalized through our address normalization software, which means it does an actual lookup to see whether it's a valid address, We still do that check, but in this case, because all we entered was homeless without any kind of street address or because it can't find a homeless street, the only thing that is displayed is the user entered address, which can be selected, and that is now the address. It's not been run through our software. It's not been normalized through our software.
Okay. After an application is submitted through the CBO portal, is there a way a client can get a personal account and be able to see their own case information?
Yeah, so this is where an application is submitted through CBO. It goes over to the C4 database. A worker can work it, but in the interim, a customer can create their own account and go through the registration request process where they submit at minimum their name, gender. Name and gender, I think, is all that's absolutely required, but they can enter in social, the case number, the address, the phone number. They can enter a lot of different identifying fields that will help the worker identify whether this person requesting the link is the correct person to link to the C4 case. Once that occurs, that's how they get access to their C4 case and any data that they might need with electronic documents, benefit information, or any posted information from the C4 system.
Thank you. Next question, does the CBO portal allow for unduplicated counts of approved applications?
I know I saw this question previously, and I wasn't really sure what it was asking, but I will try and answer it. On the CBO portal, and now that I've submitted an application, and actually I'm going to quickly submit this application as well, just so that I can show you two separate applications. So bear with me. I'm going to quickly run through the application process for this second application and then show you the counts. Okay, just creating the signature again. Just going to quickly sign the application here. Give you a view of what it looks like if two different application assisters fill out an application each. So now on the EF status page, we show different things now than you've seen before. You can narrow it down, but I think currently it defaults to a certain time range. I want to say it's 6 months, but I can verify that. So we have four different designations here. We have CalWorks applications, CalFresh applications, Medi-Cal applications, and then overall applications. So as you can see, you've got CalWorks with 1 pending and 1 total program count. CalFresh and Medi-Cal have 2 pending and 2 total program count. So they all have the same application date, but as you can see, the numbers are off. And the reason for that is we have 2 separate See for Yourself applications, one of which applied for all 3 programs, and the other applied just for the 2, CalFresh and Medi-Cal. So by unduplicated, I'm assuming you're meaning unduplicated across programs, in which case the overall application tab section is where you would go to see we as a as a CBO entity, entered in 2 complete See for Yourself applications for the application month of 1/2015. But if you wanted it separated out by program, I don't know if that's the way that you do reporting or not, but if you want to separate it out by program, then you can say for our CalWorks applications, for the month of January, we submitted 1 program application, and as of right now, that one is pending. And then the same could be said for CalWorks or CalFresh and Medi-Cal. If the statuses were different, let's say one was approved and one was pending, then you'd be able to say this would show 1 pending, 1 approved, total count of 2. Just to show you what this particular view is what it looks like for the See for Yourself CBO application, See for Yourself CBO account as a whole, and that account is right now my CBO account of Jason CBO. But if you have multiple people using that same account to log applications, then and they're each putting in their own application assister name, then if I was interested in figuring out how many Jason submitted, then I add in Jason as the application assister and click search, and now it has changed the counts where Jason submitted 1 overall application with 3 separate programs applied for, CalWorks, CalFresh, and Medi-Cal. If I were to choose Frank, which I believe was the other name I used, and do a search, and when that comes back, it shows his 1 application that was submitted, which he only applied for, he only had the customer apply for CalFresh and Medi-Cal. So there's no CalWorks line item here because he hasn't submitted any applications with CalWorks within that date range. And yes, unduplicated account. I forgot the initial question, yes. So hopefully that answers the question of unduplicated counts, but I wasn't really 100% certain what the question was asking.
All right, thank you, Jason. And right now we're going to open it up again for any questions that may have come up.
All right, we had a couple of questions come in by way of the question box. The first one was submitted by Daniel, who asks, as a CBO account, can I help someone apply through See for Yourself who is from another county than the county I am in at the moment of applying?
The answer is yes. We don't restrict the application submission by any way other than it needs to be one of the 39 counties that C4 supports. So you can select any of the 58 counties, but only 39 of them will go through and not pop up a message that says you need to go to, I believe it's benefitscal.com to select the appropriate county. And if it is a CalWin or Leader County, and those are the 2 other consortia that handle welfare distribution in California. If it's one of those 19 counties, then that's what will happen. Is when you, like for Alameda, since we don't support Alameda, when you select it, a message pops up that says, See for Yourself cannot send applications to the selected county. Go to My County Applications website. So clicking that takes you to the benefitscal.com website, and this allows you to select Alameda again. Clicking that will take you to the Benefits CalWin website, which is the CalWin website, and they maintain 18 of the 19 counties that C4 does not maintain.
Great. Another question comes in from Jagmeet, who asks, to create an account, does the consumer need a confirmation number?
No, customers can create accounts at any point. I think the reason that you're asking for a confirmation number is how do they get the application that was submitted through the CBO account? And the answer is the CBO account submits an application. The application goes over to C4. C4 will take that application and either create a case or link it to an existing case for that customer. Once that occurs, then C4 now has a record of a case for that individual. At any point, the customer can create their own account and go into the registration request page, which I will show again just for the sake of showing something while I'm talking. Let's see. So under the My Things to Do tab, after they have created their account, they click the Register with My County, request a link to your case, what case is. When they get to the Register with My County page, they enter their name and date of birth and zip and county code at a minimum. But any extra information they enter in here will allow the worker to take this request, search for that person within the C4 database, find the case that was created as a part of the application, created or reopened as a part of the application submitted through the CBO. And as long as that link occurs, then any See for Yourself application submitted through the CBO will then be transferred over to the account that was created by the customer so they can see their information, the information that was submitted through their account, and from that point forward they'll get all benefit information, electronic communication from C4.
Great. We have one more question from Betty, and she asks, if an application is submitted through the Benefits Cal website, is there any way to track that application and receive credit for the CBO entity?
So that's a harder one to answer. Let me show you what it actually does here. So the Benefits Cal website is truly just a routing website. It doesn't actually track applications, and I'll show you what happens. Like, for instance, if I choose Alameda and click Go, I click Go. It should route me to the Benefits Cal Win online portal. And so if your CBO also has a CBO account in Benefits Cal Win, then you'd have to track your application submitted through that website separately. We don't have a mechanism currently to take an application and see for yourself, but send it over to the CalWIN managed counties. However, should you for some reason come to this website and select a county that you're not currently in, like Alpine, the only thing it's going to do is route you back to see for yourself. So if you're within the context of See for Yourself, you can choose any one of the 39 counties that we support. You don't have to go to a different website. It's not going to send you over to a different website. It's just going to ask you to make sure that the zip code and county code match, but you can be in San Bernardino and submit an application for Alpine. There's no problem with that at all. Those being two C4 counties.
Great. Are there any other questions at this time? You can still raise your hand or ask your question through the question box. Okay, Stephanie, do we have a few more questions left?
Yep, we have a couple more to go through. Okay, there is a rumor that any application entered through the portal must be retyped by the counties to put into the system. Is this true?
Is it true that there's a rumor? I hope not. It is not true that the workers need to retype the information. What happens when you key in the data on a See-for-Yourself application is all of that information is saved electronically to either the CBO account or an individual's personal account, or both in the event that they create their account later. Once that information is sent up to C4, it goes into what we would call a queue of sorts. And this is a series of referrals that the counties have set up workers to process on a daily basis to make sure that everything is actioned timely. What happens is we have a series of buttons and functionality within the pages themselves that allow for customer information to be displayed side by side on the fields that would normally require the worker to type. And then there are simple button clicks that transfer the data from the electronic application into the C4 system without the worker having to rekey data. In the event that they find out through the application process or through talking to the customer that information was keyed incorrectly, maybe a fat finger or something has changed since they applied, they can add on to the application, they can add on to the case creation process by changing what gets entered into C4, but the application stays, it stays in the state that it was submitted in forever, and there are mechanisms to allow the worker not to have to rekey the data themselves. So if that is a rumor, that is not a true rumor.
Great, thank you. The next question is, CBO portal reports can show pending applications months after the date the application was submitted. How accurate is the information in the reports?
Show pending applications months. I have not heard anything about inaccurate reporting on this, so I think the way that I previously answered this question was we would need some examples where this was the case and do some research on our side to find out if there's something that's not happening appropriately. But to my knowledge, the information when the worker finalizes the program eligibility, whether that is denial or denial approval or remains pending, that should get reflected within the See4Yourself CBO portal.
All right, thank you. Is there a way to upload documents at the time of the application once the client has their own account? Even if an account is created before starting and during the electronic signature, they are still unable to upload documents. The process we have in place is to fax in the documents to the managing department. Is there a step that is being overlooked?
I don't know what steps you're following, but I can show you how it works. Yeah, there we go. So I'm currently within a regular See4Yourself account, and I'm on the My Documents section of the portal. And at the top of the section here, there's an Upload My Documents page. Clicking the Select Document button will bring you to a page that will ask you if you want to link the document to a case or any application. And as I said previously, the case will only show after it's been linked to a case. A case ID or case number will only show after the account has been linked to a case. But if you are doing the application process and you don't have a case linked yet, but you do have your verification sitting right there and you want to upload them, then you can change the drop-down from case to e-application, and that's where this next line changes to e-application number instead of case number, and the e-applications that have been submitted will display. And you can associate it to that e-application, choose the document type, and I will just quickly go through, let's see, some creative tips. So I'm going to save this as a TIFF document. or PDF. Those are the two we accept, but TIFF is easiest to create for me right now. So I've created my birth certificate. I browse. I go to the desktop and here, and I find my file of birth certificate. When I click Continue, assuming the test environment is set up correctly. Okay. So we have a upload documents with a file name of birthcert.tiff. This is where the customer can go in and select multiple. They can create multiple documents to upload. So maybe they have a birth certificate. They have, I don't know, bank verification, pay stub. So they can browse and select a different document. I'm going to select the same one, even though that's weird. Well, my test environment seems to have had a problem. It may have a problem with the same file name displaying. So I guess I'll just show the one. But in the event that you are trying to upload multiple and you realize that you've uploaded a document that you didn't actually need, you can click Remove, and it will remove it from the list, and you can add it back or add the correct one. Until you click this Upload button, nothing actually happens. You're just, until you click that Upload button, all you've done is set the verification documents that you want to upload. You've set them up to be uploaded, but you haven't actually done anything. So when you click this Upload, this list will be cleared, and I'll just do it. I don't know if it works or not, but we'll see.
There you go.
Okay. So now the document has been uploaded, the list is gone, and it says you currently have no documents pending upload. So I don't know if the question was what step was being missed. Hopefully that cleared it up, but that is how you do it.
Awesome. Thank you for showing us that. All right, just a couple more questions. Can audio files, i.e. telephonic signatures, be uploaded through the portal?
Not at this time. I don't really have more to say on it than that. It's not functionality that's currently supported in the See for Yourself portal.
All right, and last question. On the application, there is a page on the demographic question asking, what is your citizenship status? And then goes on and asks for document type. Is there a list of different documents that not all outreach workers are familiar with, especially those with numbers? Has anyone created an info sheet that explains what each of those documents mean?
There isn't one as far as I know on the See for Yourself site itself. There may be an external document that either another CBO or a county has created. Maybe there's a policy document somewhere, but I don't personally know of one. I would suggest getting in contact with any of the counties that you guys are partners with and see if they have any information on it, since ultimately the information will come over to them and they'll need to put it into the C4 system. I'm sure they'd be interested in making sure that whatever information you're entering in is correct, because you know what it means.
Okay, thank you. And then at this time, we're going to open up again for any questions that the group may have. And that was our last question.
Okay, I have 3 more questions that have come in by way of the question box. And the first one is asked by Jenny. And she asks, what is the expectation for CalFresh outreach staff in relation to their rights and responsibilities? Is it okay to scroll through like Jason did, give them basic info and let them know the county will go through that information? Now, before I hand it over to you, Jason, I'd like to take a stab at that and then see if you've got anything additional to add. But I can say, Jenny, that from our policy people's perspective here at CDSS, the submission of an electronic application is the same as a submission of a paper application, and that the expectation at the state level is that any applications that are submitted on behalf of a client, that the rights and responsibilities are carefully reviewed and gone over. So they would read through and ask the client, do you understand your basic rights and responsibilities? So you know, as nice as it would be to scroll through that, I think that the responsibility from at least the state perspective is that you review those rights and responsibilities, because when you submit the final application on their behalf, that is a legal document submitted to the county, and the county expects that the person does have a good understanding. Even though the county will review that at the time of the personal interview, they just want to make sure that that's there. Do you have anything else to add to that, Jason?
Being that it's more of a policy question, I don't really have anything to add other than part of the reason why that particular page in the application was coded the way that it was is that this is not just a CBO application portal, right? I mean, anybody could go in and submit an application at any time. So we tried to model it after other terms and conditions and user license agreements or rights and responsibilities pages that we've seen on other websites where you don't display all of the information at once if you want to have any kind of reasonable assurance that they're going to read the page. So that's why we have that scrolling area that they can scroll through, that the only way to be able to check the box and move on is if they scroll to the bottom. And we can't really enforce that they read each line individually, but that's as good as we can get to try and enforce that they read it to, have that information for when they sign the document saying that yes, they have read it.
Great, thank you. Another question from Jenny is this. She says, I pulled a report for last April through June, and it showed 7 applications still pending. Can you explain why this might happen?
I can't. I mean, I would need more. I would need more information. It doesn't sound right considering how old the dates that you're talking about are, but I don't have a good explanation other than I would need to look into it.
And by the way, Jason, I do have copies of those reports that Jenny sent me, so you mind if I forward them on to you?
That's fine, and if she can indicate any kind of identifying account information so that I can see what applications are associated to it and which ones are still remaining pending, and whether that is an issue in communication or if there really is an issue where the workers haven't worked that application, which, I mean, I find that less likely than a communication issue, but I just need something to let me know how to research it.
Okay, we'll work on that and get that to you. Thank you.
Great.
Then the last question on the list is, once an application has been submitted through C4, how long does it take for the county to receive or have access to it? And that's asked by Daniel.
And by C4, you're saying as long as the application is submitted through C4 yourself, how long does it take to get over to C4? We have a periodic transfer process that runs every 5 minutes, so it should be 5 minutes or less. I can't guarantee that the workers will work it within that 5-minute window, but that's when it will be available in C4 for the worker to review in the inbound queue.
Right, and as I've seen operations at the county level, if it arrives after business hours on a Friday, it may not be able to be plucked out of the queue until the following Monday or the next business day. But you're
right,
saying
that is true.
Yeah,
that is true. Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we have any additional questions? Well then, Stephanie, I will let you wrap it up. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you everyone. This concludes our webinar for today. I'd like to thank Jason and the C4 team for conducting this webinar, the part 2, and thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your time. Have a great day.